So one of the things you'll hear people talking about this time of year is pruning tomatoes if you're in the garden. Obviously, if you're not in the garden, if you're laying on the beach somewhere worried about your tan, you're not going to hear somebody talking about pruning tomatoes. However, if you do gardening, if you grow tomatoes, then you'll hear about this. And so I watched some videos on YouTube, and it seems like people make it so freaking complicated about how to prune tomatoes. So there's a few reasons you do it. One, you'll notice that I space mine pretty close together. Most of the time online, you'll hear people, or you'll read that you should space indeterminate tomatoes 2 to 3 feet apart. Well, mine are a foot apart in any direction, diagonally or across, or straight across. So that's pretty close, and the reason I do that is because I prune mine so heavily. The first things you should do when you prune is you should prune what we call, or maybe I shouldn't even talk about that. You should prune growth that comes up after a leaf. So what you'll see is on a tomato plant like this one, in my hands here. So you got the stem, and from each stem you'll have a leaf here, a node there, and an internode up to the next leaf. Right? And so essentially at the internode, that's where the new growth, it's called axillary growth, but that's where you want to prune. Right? So see that little new growth coming on there? I just want to pull that off. Right? If you don't pull it off, then let me find another one. Right? So here's another one. Right? So leaf, node, internode. So I want to pull that off. If I don't pull that off, that's just going to be a massive growth right there. And sure, it'll put on some more tomatoes, but it's going to take away from everything else too. And so you just come in here and you pull that off. And so some people will say that's suckering tomatoes, but it's also pruning. The other thing you should do is you should come in and you should trim all of these leaves off the bottom. Right? So at this stage, I'll trim any leaf off that has the potential to touch the ground. Right? So I'll bring my cutters and I'll cut that one off, and I'll cut that one off, and I'll cut that one off. And so I've already done it for one row. So let me show you what these look like. So notice these at the bottom, right? You can look down that row and you see there's no leaves touching the ground because I've pruned them all off. Right? So I pruned, that was a leaf, I pruned that. I pulled that sucker, right, or axillary growth off. Right? I left this leaf because it's not touching the ground, and I pulled that axillary growth off. And so this one, it'll just keep growing straight up and not out. And that's what you want. And so when you're growing them this way, it lets plenty of airflow get through to each one, so I'm growing more closely, and it'll still produce about as much. Now the other thing that'll happen is your tomatoes will get taller. If you don't prune them, they'll stay kind of shorter but way more bushy. If you prune them like this, they'll get much taller, so you need to kind of make sure you plan for that in some way. And so here, this rebar is about 5 feet out of the ground, and they'll probably easily topple this. But that's how you prune tomatoes. It's not rocket science. There's nothing super hard about it. People just make it sound that way.